I actually am an architect by training, but mostly what I'm going to talk about are things that are architectural, but in a slightly different way. So for those of you who don't know, I thought I'd give a brief introduction to IDEO and what IDEO does in the United States and around Europe. But I have to say that I feel somewhat sad that we have no work to show around India. We just finished our first project with Mahindra, but actually there's no work that I can actually show of it. So it's all going to be kind of US-based work. So when people come to IDEO, they mostly come to us to ask this question. What is the blank of the future? People don't come to IDEO when they know what they want. They come when they feel like there's something slightly different that has to happen. Either the world has changed, or the people who use the space has changed, or the consumer in general has changed. And a lot of what I'm going to talk about is how we solve the problem of what the future of blank is. So some examples of some of the things we've worked on. IDEO started as a product design company, so some of the first work we did was around cellular phones, telephones, and we always try to pair concept with reality. So here you have a project that was based on what it could mean if technology let us use the phone more like jewelry. So why does the phone have to act like a phone? So it's basically the phone as rings. But at the same time, trying to take that and funnel it into real projects. So on the other side of the project we've done for Trio to develop the first of the small computing telephones. So at a time when nobody really thought there would be computing in a phone of that size. We've worked a lot in the space of workplace, and again, going all the way from concept to reality. So on one side, you see a project that we did for the cartoon character Dilbert, and that was actually to think about the ideal workspace for a cartoon character. And on the other side is real applications of technology in the workplace. And so this is a project for a group called Teleportec. And Teleportec is a group that allows you, it's a machine that allows you to have a full-scale discussion with somebody around the world. So basically, you can talk to somebody who's in India from the US, and it's as though they're sitting in the room. So that guy's actually just a projection. And it's so realistic that when you're the projected person, you can call your dog, and the dog will run up to the screen, which is pretty amazing. To work for Prada, so this is a project we did with Prada and with Rem Koolhaas, and this is to rethink the way retail would happen in a retail store. And what was interesting about this project is that a lot of it was focused on technology, and specifically how every piece of clothing had a piece of technology that allowed you to know everything about that clothing when you hung it up in your dressing room. But what's interesting about this project is that despite that, the most exciting, because that kind of failed, the most exciting thing was a mirror that allowed you to see what you look like from the front and the back at the same time. So you could actually see what your butt looked like in your jeans at the same time you saw yourself in the front. And people spent hours there. It's very exciting to see yourself in the front and the back at the same time. To healthcare. A lot of the work that my practice does is in healthcare. And I'm going to talk about a project that we did about 3 years ago. And now I would say about 30% of the work that I do is in healthcare. Working with companies like Mayo. We're actually just doing our first project in the Middle East to think about healthcare and the way that you can make better patient experiences. And lastly, we actually work with countries as well. And so we actually just about a year and a half ago did a project with Finland, because Finland called us, the Prime Minister of Finland called us and said, would you mind if we got to work with IDEO to think about the future of Finland? And we kind of thought it was a joke, so we said, sure, come on over, come to San Francisco, hang out with us, and we'll help you. So about 6 weeks later, 2 whole tour buses full of the Finnish Parliament showed up at our offices. And our job was to take them out and use design process to rethink the way that they could think about Finland and the way they govern Finland. Which, if you don't know, one of the big hazards here was that we took them out in the morning, and first we took them to breakfast, and then took them out to observe the city. And what we didn't know is that the Finnish are really big drinkers. And so, at breakfast, we're all having coffee, and they're downing their 3rd and 4th Bloody Mary, like one after another. And then I had to send, basically, the entire Finnish Parliament into the worst neighborhood of San Francisco. So I was pretty certain that we'd kill Finland, and that Sweden was going to call us and thank us, because they'd just take it over at some point. So the work that we do ranges pretty wildly, and the whole point of what I'm going to talk about today is that despite the fact that we go from product to space to country, we always use the same design process. And there are really 3 things that we think about primarily, and I'll kind of talk through what those processes are. But what we believe is that there's big scale design with a big D, that's Apple, and those are places that do really fantastic product design and building design, and then there's small d design, and that's more about the process, and a lot of what I'm going to talk about is that. Three things that we do think about that we think are really important. One is brand, and brand is really the way that you want to express yourself, and brand plays out whether you're a company or whether you're a country. You all have something you want to say about who you are. The second is technology. At IDEO, we believe that the world has changed so fundamentally because of technology that if we as designers don't think about the way technology affects us, we're fundamentally missing the boat. I think there's actually no place where that's more true than here, where it seems that technology is allowing you to leapfrog over other things that happen. You've actually built so much of your infrastructure on new technology. So thinking about how this impacts design is very important to us. And then lastly, and most important, we think about people and what people do, and from that, what you actually want to design for them. So I think I'll talk a little bit about some of the things that we look at. Before I do that, though, one thing that's important to recognize is that though I'm an architect by training, and though we do spaces, all of our work is multidisciplinary. So we actually, every team that we have has an architect, a product designer, graphic designer, a technologist, and a group called human factors. And human factors, so you know, are anthropologists, psychologists, sociologists, people who are especially good at looking out in the world and figuring out what you want to make from looking at the way people act. So some of the methods that we use. One is, we believe in doing in-depth interviews where you spend a great deal of time with somebody. And that doesn't mean that you just talk to somebody for an hour, but you'll spend 3 or 4 hours with them to find out what really matters to them. So one of our projects is Ritz-Carlton, and they've asked us to look at the way to redefine luxury for their hotels. So one of the things that we did is go out and talk to people about what luxury means in the U.S. So we'd go and spend hours and hours in their magnificent, luxurious homes and say, what do you do for yourself that's really luxurious? And what's interesting is, when we would ask these questions, people would say, oh, I don't do anything luxurious. I don't believe in luxury. I'm a Puritan by nature. America's puritanical. We don't treat ourselves well. And so we would sit there and we'd kind of be like, what? And at one point, one of our observers saw this woman's hand. She had these beautiful nails. She had a French manicure. And so we said, oh, well, what about your nails? It looks like you're treating yourself quite well there. And she's like, that's a French manicure. It's not a luxury. It's a necessity. So what that said to us is that you never talk about luxury in the way that you think about it. You think about it as something that you really need for yourself. So it allows us to redefine the way you might talk about luxury if you're a luxurious hotel chain. So it's those kind of things that you get when you spend a great deal of time with people in the field. We do this also to test assumptions, and this is one of my favorite stories. We were asked by the Gap a while ago to think about technology in their stores, and specifically to think about the way that might actually deal with an aging population. And one of the things that they said right off the bat is that we don't believe that technology actually and like aging people coexist. That you can't. People who are older don't like to work off of computers. So we heard about a village in England called Wetmore, where they were actually wiring the entire village for the internet, and it was basically an elderly community. So we said, well, let's go spend a year there and see the way they relate to technology. And what we found off the bat is that they love technology. They actually relate to technology really well. In fact, have you ever seen people happier than this around a computer? They're just loving it. And what we found, though, is that's different about the way that they use technology is that they do it in a group. They do it as a social experience. So that allowed us to think about the way technology could be designed to support this group. So again, it's about asking questions and testing assumptions. We also try to go out and look for strange behaviors, things that we think might impact the way that actually people relate to spaces and products. So things that you wouldn't actually talk about, but you would notice. So one is an example of, we were talking to the London Metro, and one of the big issues that London too was that they actually were having a lot of problems with litter. And one of the things that we began to realize is that because there's no trash cans, because they're always afraid of bombing, any flat surface becomes a place where litter gets deposited. So there's a way that you can design for that allows that not to happen. Or even product things. This is one of my favorite examples. This is in Paris, and we were going through a really crowded airport, and